This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. This one is kind of a holiday tradition for us, but this is kind of a unique year for us. So every year around this time of year, we take a look at some trends that we're monitoring in the market as we get to the holidays and lead into tax season. Last year was a complete bear market because, the free money train was rolling in, the reserve list explosion happened and sustained. And this year, things are very different. We still don't have paper events, really. We had Vegas, where the only coverage was a crowdsourced top 64 list.
Yep.
And that's kind of all we have to go on. So the market's kind of a little strange right now.
I found out.
Yes.
There was actually the equivalent of a 5K in Europe a couple of weeks ago, maybe around the same time as Vegas. I didn't know about it until I was listening to Dominaria's Judgment. Ari Lax's and Dominic Harvey's podcast. They went over the Vegas results 2 weeks ago, and they also cover the results of that. So, to your point, very few tournaments, but what's happening in region is not really making it out of region. Vegas is Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Come to Vegas, play Magic if you care.
Right. And so that's what we're covering. Is those market trends, how things are different, how it compares to previous years, and what really is the thing that matters most to us as we trek through the holidays and what's important. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Now, this is not to go against what we talked about a couple episodes ago, which is, are we changing our methods as we move towards paper play or as we stay longer in the pandemic if, variants pop up? This is specifically for the holidays because things happen differently. And you mentioned a big one, corporate taxes, where you get taxed on your inventory. So you don't necessarily want to liquidate, but you definitely want to push out as much as you possibly can. So one of the big things that I try and look for is sealed from vendors that allow promo codes to stack on top of their sales. And they may not be the greatest promo codes, but 5% is still 5%. And the reason I want to go with vendors is because their cost on sealed is much less than those posting to TCG Player. And the majority of posts on TCG Player aren't vendors, they're individuals. Now, the one thing I do care about when I'm looking at this is what I will pay as opposed to, or in comparison to the EV from Dawn Glare. And the closer we can get, the more opportune this is going to be for me. This is really the first year I'm going to have both the funds and the space to do this, and what I'm going to look for is sealed that is still in print, so basically standard sets. Right now, my ideal is Zendikar for two reasons. There's the buy-a-box promos, or not the buy-a-box promos, there's the promo inserts in the boxes, and I think that set is an EDH goldmine. It just hasn't really been recognized yet. There's a lot going on in that set. It was a pandemic special, and it's not as highly allocated as we need it to be, yet there's still a lot of it flowing right now in terms of open cards. Nothing like Adventures in the Forgotten Realms and Strixhaven, where we got back, quote unquote, to paper play, but there's still a lot of Zendikar that was open for the above reasons. But I think this is going to be a set that will ripen or age like a fine wine, and so for me, sitting on this one's going to be a pretty easy win. And I'd hate to say it, but it's kind of the only plane that I care about sitting on sealed for. Financially speaking, it was the first plane I was able to buy into and hold sealed for. And it's not like that holds any kind of charm, but it's like the more I think about it, the more Zendikar as a plane resembles a financial opportunity, regardless of when we go back to it. It's kind of like Ravnica. Ravnica, generally speaking, is an easy win for a hold. We're way past prime for that. That would have been holidays like 4 years ago. But I think for me, it's Zendikar this year. I wish Call Time would have held up a little better than it did, and I wish Ikoria weren't as so narrowly allocated as it was. Otherwise, I could look at those sets. But
Yeah.
for those reasons, they kind of push out, and here we have Zendikar, and that's the one I'm going to look for. But like I said, vendors during sale times that hopefully allow me to stack promo codes.
Yeah, my big trend that I was watching this year was, as I do every year, pay attention to the power retrace. And what was really interesting this year is, last year the retrace happened like normal, despite the fact that the free money train was rolling.
Yep.
This year, the retrace plateaued much sooner than it did in previous years. Mm-hmm. Instead of like a 10 to 15% retrace, we only saw like a 5% retrace on these prices. And in some cases, they're starting to go back up. And Twister was even less. I don't think Twister retraced much, if at all.
No.
It was just very interesting to see, like, in a time of financial uncertainty, when people are out of jobs, unemployment's high, whatever, WotC is just pouring shit out as quickly as they can. Product release. We cover it in a quick hits episode, how there's a month next year that just,
or a quarter
next year that has like 6 releases or something like that over a short
span. 3
span.
of them at a minimum, maybe 4 are draftable.
Yeah.
It averages out to like 2.6 times that per month they expect people to be in a store to draft something new. Be it a pre-release or a release. It's ridiculous.
Not happening. And despite all of that, the blue chips in the investment field of Magic maintained a lot of value this year, which is not typical. They retain value better than other things do. But the retrace was not nearly as long as it had been in previous years. And that was incredibly interesting to me because all of the signs out there besides crypto point to a much larger retrace, which leads into crypto obviously has a much bigger impact on the power market than it does the rest of the Magic market at large, to the point that I'm almost starting to see it as a separate market from the rest of MTG Finance. Power is in its own sphere, as it always has been, but it's almost a separate currency compared to like dual lands and stuff like that.
I got it. Okay. That makes sense.
So, yeah, that was something that was interesting, and it was also seeing that people were paying near TCG numbers on that power was the big tip-off for me. Because, Sick Deals is 10% below TCG low.
Yep.
There was legitimately power that moved at those numbers and not at eBay numbers. And in some cases, it was $500 to $1,000 more for the TCG price, and people still paid it.
Yeah.
It was wild.
We also saw at Vegas, as it goes, image dumps of hot lists, and I think Toa took on the responsibility of floating Lotus.
Yeah, they floated Lotus at, I think it was 14.
Yep, something like that.
Just ridiculous.
And they had a handful of photos go up, and one of them was a 2-for-1 on Lotuses.
Yeah.
Trading 2 unlimited of some condition for 1 unlimited that was crimped or something.
Yeah.
And it seemed like those that were in the reserve list market for blue chip pieces we're going to be able to make money hand over fist because of this retrace. And a question was asked, I think, again, of Toa, well, what about old school cards, old school staples? And basically, I think it was Michael who responded, and the TLDR on it was exactly what you said, which is we bought old school cards that matter.
Yeah.
A 4th Chains of Mephistopheles is not a good investment.
No.
That was the tweet, the end. And that they were very honed in on exactly what they needed. No chaff, only wheat.
Yep. Just going for the bread and butter that's actually going to sell and keeping conscious. And this is something that, this was another trend I've noticed just over the last year, not necessarily the holidays, is more vendors are starting to say no to cards. And it used to be, out of a 10 vendor haul, 7 of them would say yes to everything.
Yeah.
They you might not like the number, but they'd give you a number on it. And more vendors are starting to be more careful about their money, particularly like the bigger vendors. 95 spent, mid 6 figures is what I'd heard. at Vegas. Same with Toa. These large companies spent this amount of money, but they were particular about how they spent it, which has not always been the case. So vendors are starting to get smarter about it, which means you as a customer need to get smarter about it. You need to check your hot lists. You need to check your staples. You need to check the market outside of just the hall.
Yes, yeah.
And it's becoming more and more important to be an educated consumer because of that. In addition, just paying the right price and knowing what the right price is on a card. A friend of mine picked up a box topper Mana Vault for foil for $260. And he was like, well, it said $350 on TCG. I'm like, yeah, that said that was the market price. Low was like $250. So you paid $10 more to get it right away, which is fine.
Yeah.
But now it's down to $200.
Yeah.
So now he's trying to get rid of it, and all of a sudden I'm out $60 because I bought it thinking it was $100 cheaper.
Yep. So is the scramble. You pay attention to the button, quote unquote, Amazon term, and yeah, you might get taken because TCG Player is floating you a price that is not accurate of where things actually are. But to come back from that wonderful tangent, the other thing that I'm looking at is just continued EDH staples, and not in general, specifically for Modern Horizons 2. It's something we've been saying over the last couple of weeks, maybe months. As Modern Horizon moves out of print, it's a very good time to start looking at staples. And EDH in particular. Multi-format, great. So up top, multi-format cards like the Fetchlands and Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, A+, I think. After that, it just becomes pure EDH gold, where you have tribal generals and staples, things like Chatterfang, Patriarch's Bidding, and then Morari's Wake, which is another kind of gold standard card. And the point I'm going to hammer home again is like sales and promo code layering is key for this.
Yeah.
Like, not a lot of people are going to put sale premiums on EDH stuff, but any kind of bundling that I can do or shifting cards to credit to pick up via the credit bump and promo codes from somebody who has a glut is something I'm going to want to do, especially on cards that have been flat for a little too long, like Yavimaya, when I made that pick a couple weeks ago. And Patriarch's Bidding, which tumbled. I think you can still, if you can arbitrage in bulk, I think you can still arbitrage Patriarch's Bidding off of MKM into the US anywhere. Patriarch's Bidding should not be like $1 or $2, whatever that card is right now. That's too cheap. There might have been the weird Foretell version in Kaldheim, but it costs too much in terms of mana, and it is not Patriarch's Bidding. And when you can buy Bidding for so cheap, you buy Bidding.
Yeah, that's just something you should do. And I think it's that kind of mirrors what the other thing I was going to say was Fetchlands specifically. In addition to EDH, like for me, what I've been doing is literally arbitraging KTK fetches into MH2 fetches, because after seeing Secret Lair EDH, I don't ever want to hold on to anything anymore.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to print it in a Secret Lair. We're going to get, I can almost guarantee in the next 6 months, KTK fetches will see a reprint in some meaningful way to keep the price down again. So I'm trying to arbitrage them now into MH2 fetches because they are way too affordable. There is no reason Scalding Tarn should be $20, but here we are. And I think, paying attention to EDH, and again, MH2, now that it's starting to dry up, and this was the same thing that, of all people, I will never forget when MH1 came out. Ed Wynn said, Silent Shinobi or whatever, the Silent Oni Shinobi, that one, he was like, this is the card I want. I'm like, why? The card's terrible. He's like, it's 5 cents. Okay, makes sense. It's not 5 cents anymore. And that's exactly what you're going to see with MH2, to your point, is paying attention to those EDH, like your Chatterfangs. You can get full art Chatterfangs for less than $3 now. That seems, when Ragavan is running all over Constructed, which good for Ragavan, but we know casual formats drive the market. So cards like Full Art Chatterfang are a good pickup. Cards like Fetchlands are a good pickup. Yeah. And I think especially if you layer promo codes and coupon codes, or even if you just hit up the played case at your LGS, fine. Get what you can while you can, because these prices, despite my point of everything being a week away from getting reprinted for the 5th time. These prices won't last forever.
No, not at all.
Yavimaya Cradle of Growth is not going to be a $6 card forever. Ignoble Hierarch is not going to be a sub $6 card forever either. It's just not.
No. And there is some fuzziness because previous Masters sets didn't have all the treatments that Modern Horizons 2 did, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, these cards are going to churn. You're going to be able to use them, sell them, trade them, what have you. And it's just going to be a matter of time. We've been pumping fetches for a while. We like to talk about Modern Masters 3 and the reprinting of the Zendikar fetch lands, and we've talked about that eventual retrace back to Zendikar prices for those fetch lands. And the stocks article on Friday, it was either that one or an out of cycle article, talked specifically about the fetch lands, and that is immediately applicable to everything from Modern Horizons 2 that is playable in EDH at a decent amount. And you can, the things I want to stay away from are the cards that are tournament staples, specifically, obviously modern cards, but the cards that are good there but do not see EDH play, like Plague Engineer and Dothy, what is it?
Voidwalker,
right? Amazing cards from both sets.
Cards are great.
Incredible tournament staples. Well worth whatever they're going to be in a year or two. But their ceiling is going to come a lot more slowly than an EDH card.
Yeah.
They'll get to that ceiling eventually, but it's not going to be like an EDH card. It's not going to retrace as quickly. The fetch lands withstanding, right? That they're just something different. People will just gobble those things up for all formats based on the price. But it's going to be the EDH cards that we're going to see a larger profit on sooner. If you want to move on tournament staples, I don't blame you, but the same things apply. I'd still look for sales, layer coupon codes, and then just move in like that. We're well past the point where we've hit the minimum price for everything, and I think that's the most important thing to look out for. I would have said, because I love the set dearly thanks to Triomes, but I don't think those are going to go down much over time. Ikoria is out of print. We're never going to get any more of it, and if we do see Triomes in new whatever the new wedge set, whatever it's supposed to be, if we do finish out the cycle there, then those could be the dual lands, quote unquote, that we see in standard moving forward. And so I'm kind of a little uneasy. I don't know.
Well, I think for me, I'm fine with those because at least the Ikoria ones are plane specific.
That's what I was going to say, is I didn't know if all of those were plane specific or not, but at the same time, so were the temples from Theros, and they pulled those out for core sets.
Yeah.
So.
Which, are we still getting core sets? I guess we got an M21, so probably.
Yeah, let me check.
I just can't remember seeing one in next year's release.
I was looking for the commanders, the yearly commander sets in next year's releases, and I couldn't figure anything out, but I think Q4 is filled out, and I do not see immediately. On the surface, nothing looks like a core set, but we have Dominaria again, so, maybe?
Yeah, could happen.
Yeah.
I guess.
New Capenna. I was thinking Capernia, so that's wrong.
Yeah.
And the Lord of the Rings set is 2023, so that's 2 years out. Oh, yeah, that's right. We have Dominaria United and the Brothers War. So it's like...
Right.
Could one of those be an actual core set? Yeah, when we got Dominaria previously, we still got a core set. But the Brothers War harkens back to Dominaria again. So it's like Dominaria X3. So will this be the War of the Spark of the Dominaria sets? We don't know. Could it be a core set? Maybe. Who knows? But there's no dedicated core set. But as far as the holidays are concerned, that's really what I'm looking at. And I feel like that's just going to be kind of cyclical for me. I think this is a fine formula. Whether or not we get a master set is kind of questionable. Whatever, I don't want to say hot product is coming out, but whatever one is really EDH applicable. And I think that's just going to be where I look. And to the point that you made, holding a lot of this stuff is highly questionable. It's but at the same time, if you cast such a wide net, you're never going to get caught. Unless they do
Yeah.
literally an EDH deck in every secret layer bundle and they put Cabal coffers in every one. Like, I just can't imagine getting caught by
Sure,
going
yeah.
so wide.
No, not at all.
I'm not saying that your point is invalid. It's definitely true. You know, for people that want to sit on infinite soul rings, you might have a bit of a problem when they just put a soul ring out every month. But like,
Yeah.
or lightning greaves cards that are just like short printed anyway because they were in Mirrodin and then just supplementals. But like, looking at these cards that were just printed, things, especially mythics, it seems kind of difficult to get hoisted as well, right? The fetch lands are regular rare, so they can be put in a commander product like a secret layer, whatever they want, and like financially, it's kind of whatever. They take up a rare slot, but who cares? Because it's just somebody's twisted EDH deck. You know, the one we're talking about, Gavin Verity wanted to make a flip coin deck, so like there you go. It's just random flip coins together. You don't have to play in the paradigm if here's a brand new set or here's a theme for the year. It's just like, all right, here's Iron Forthsight's deck. Here is Adam Prozac's deck. Here is Jacob Van Lunen's deck. And, like, sure, you got a Fetches in there. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, like, I was talking to someone today, and I said, you know, how long until we get Secret Lair Zoomer Jund? And all of a sudden, oh, here's, you know, 3 Renin, or a playset of Renin 6s for $100. Who cares? You know, WotC doesn't, clearly.
So it's like...
just ludicrous.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't imagine truly getting caught out, but it does speak to wanting to churn through this a little faster. I think that's also something to keep in mind. Is the lower, the better the price, the sooner you get in, the faster you can get out before you get got. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that's it for me this year for holiday stuff, and I like I said, I imagine that's going to be cyclical for me right now.
Yeah, I think, you know, especially as we get to the holidays, these cycles become more and more important, especially over the last couple of years where we've kind of seen, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because we pay attention to this stuff year round. This is the time of year where for the last couple of years, I've seen the most change in the cycles. Like, the fall reserve list boom happens every year. You get a retrace. You get your modern season. You get your legacy season. EDH is always doing EDH things. But for the past couple of years, the holidays have been kind of an odd spot because things haven't been as typical as they had in previous years. And I don't know if that's just because of the holidays or because of how releases are working now, where we're getting, I guess, 2 standard sets a month and a half apart, or 3 sets a month almost, or 2, you know, whatever it was that we mathed out in Q2 next year. If that's impacting the change, and that's something that, obviously I want to know why it's happening because I'd like to understand that. But it's just been a weird couple of holiday seasons, I feel like.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on with a change in product slate, because remember, we used to get holiday bundles.
Oh, yeah. Fun fact, the original holiday bundle could support Ogre's Weight for about 20 minutes.
Yeah. And that's both a hefty person and a hefty box.
Yes.
And so we've seen the change in that. The commander stuff is no longer towards this part of the year. Yeah, well, it's no longer... Yeah, it comes out every set, so you're no longer waiting for it. And it's... You now get... So you get those. We have the Challenger decks that were introduced sometime around Call Time. Not Call Time, Kaladesh.
Yeah.
And the ones we just got were Pioneer. So with the return of paper play, people might be putting money there to play that format. Modern Horizons literally happened before and during COVID in the summer, so that changes where people allocate money, especially if they want to move into Modern. It's just like the products that are good at making people open their purses are doing exactly what they have to for the average player.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what usually happens in regards to the reserve list, in regards to power, in regards to like high-end iconic cards.
Yeah.
I think it's that mid-level churn that you were mentioning that we've seen a lot less of around the holiday season because there's so many other products pulling eyes. You no longer have to buy singles for the player in your life. You could buy any number of infinite odds and ends for somebody. Yeah. And so I think it's really is just that thinning the dollar.
Yeah, I think so.
Picks?
Let's do it.
I'll go first because we already talked about Ikoria. We'll give people a break.
Sounds good.
All right, so
Yeah.
my pick for the week is one I've had in my pocket for 6 months now. Thought it was going to be longer. And it's a card that I've been...
Is it a green EDH card?
No, surprisingly, it's a blue one.
Oh, wow.
It was also a blue standard tournament staple.
Ooh.
I've been waiting on this card to pop, not because I have infinite of this type of card, but because I thought it would happen a lot sooner. It does a lot. And it is Biden of Thassa.
Oh, yeah, that card's insane.
It is, right? All the weapons are really good with their passive abilities. Every single one of them is outstanding. The Biden of Thassa has an interesting activated ability compared to the others. Still good, but
yes,
interesting. I put this on my list in June of 2021. CK was buying 155 at $1.15. TCG Market saw 162 near mint or better English copies at $2.15. CK is now buying 162 at $1.35. I know it's like single digit percentile changes there. And there are 190 on TCG Player at $3 market. So we've seen both an increase in population and an increase in price in open market. And so that's, where we are on this card. That's why I'm finally picking it. We've seen enough change in the market. It's been slow, it's been steady, and it's now impacting buy lists positively. So I'll bring back the stocks graph. And like you can see, this card was basically a sleeper after it falls out of standard at cents a piece and finally starts picking up right around Throne of Eldraine. I think that's its symbol in that time. And, just a real nice slope ever since on this. Getting up to like that $3 market, like I said. As reported by TCG Player, not their API for some reason. So, as far as playability when the format goes, this is not the card you want in a deck that doesn't go wide-ish, but the value you can accrue with even a mid-sized army is really good. And it's a stalwart go-to for a go-wide deck that can or will be playing blue. So, your standard Selesnya token deck obviously can't play this. It's got other options, a little bit different, a little bit better. So, in regards to where this sits in the format, the utility of this card is pretty on the nose. It does everything it says. And the best example of what it does in the format is reading Tetsuo Umezawa Fugitive, the third most popular general for this deck. Creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. Bangarang Rufio. That's it. Now you're just drawing a card for every creature you attack with, because generally speaking, the creatures you're making are not the largest.
No, they are not.
Spoiler alert. Similar to cards like Keep Watch, which is a 5 mana value instant that basically says draw a card for each attacking creature you control. The idea is to keep you flush with cards while being able to play an aggressive style of game or a combo or combo-esque game with something like the Locust God. And it's a great casual style of card that lets you play to some gain, bird people and other blue X tribes that can go wide-ish but just need a helping hand to keep up with card quantity, since the overall card quality is low. And I know that sounds like a bit like a bunch of word salad, but basically at the end of the day, what this card does is it allows you to play low power, both in terms of card quality and actual power of creatures decks, and keep up with other people because you're just refilling your hand. So you take a look at the generals on Rex, and they're all over the place. I mentioned the Locust God, which is obviously a combo general. You have Psy Master Thopterus down there as well. That's going to be making Thopters. They're 1/1s. You can buff them, obviously. I mentioned Bird People. That's Kanji, Skywarden, or the other Kanji, because they're both in the same deck, essentially. You have a bunch of Merfolk and just a bunch of odds and ends. Even ninjas are on here, and they're really small, and that's kind of the problem. But the boon of Biden of Thassa is that it just keeps you going. It keeps you cranking because your creatures are not great. End of the day, they're not great, and you're not a dedicated combo deck unless you're playing the Locust God. And I mentioned it's got an interesting activated ability, and it can play quite interestingly at your table, and I wouldn't count it out as a driver for price. Controlling combat even lightly like this, can pay dividends in terms of success at most tables. So I mentioned the activated earlier. Colorless and blue, tap it, creatures your opponents control, attack this turn if able. So you basically just make somebody enter combat. Usually this is a Boros ability. I think like Master Warcraft and what's Raging River controls combat, but that's like separating blockers and crap. Like blue usually doesn't get this, and you can be a real pain in the ass with this card. And so it creates a weird and interesting situation. Like, yes, somebody could just murk you. It doesn't say they can't attack you, so there's that. But it's an activated ability, it's unique, and so that can't be counted out as a driver. Now, based on the market price slope, which I mentioned earlier, and I'll bring up again, slow and steady, the fact that we are not, and the fact that we're not slated to go back to Theros anytime soon, and the commander decks we will be seeing through the summer will be bound to recent standard set releases, not Theros. I expect to be able to out-Biden to buy list for profit solidly within 6 months. So it's just based on the slope that we're seeing. I wouldn't touch any version of this card that isn't the Theros non-foil if my plan was to churn in the mid-term. And the reason for that is when we look at CK and we look at what they're buying, they're not buying many copies of any other version of this card besides the Theros non-set. So if we're looking to buy list, that's the way we're going to go. However, if I was going to go for a longer term hold and whether the Double Masters 22 and Warhammer Commander deck possible reprints, I would look at the set foil before the launch party foil, despite the launch party foil having unique art. And the reason for this is that that's the one that commands the premium, the set foil. The least, it's not the least printed one because we've seen it in the Commanders. Where's the other foil from? Masters 25, obviously.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, not a lot of demand on that one. But
yeah,
we have one piece of unique art on this card, and it's the launch foil promo. But what we've been seeing recently is that one piece of unique art doesn't always mean it's the best version to buy. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of this recent stuff, especially for Commander things, when it's not a secret layer card, doesn't always pull a premium. It in the original alt art. The very similar art. There are a million launch foils floating around because launch day was essentially just release. So everybody who showed up to the release draft or whatever events just got these for free. Whether or not that equals the quantity that was opened in time, definitely not. But the fact that they're just free flowing and available in binders, it's kind of damning for this overall. I do mention the possibility of the Double Masters 22 reprint and Warhammer reprints, and I don't think we'll get them, but WotC, as we've mentioned a number of times, likes terrible puns, and the Biden is too. So here we are. And then I'm sure somebody in the Warhammer universe uses a weapon that could be co-opted, and this will dovetail into your pick, where they just, it's somebody's weapon, something cool in the Warhammer universe, and then underneath in really tiny text it says Biden of Thassa.
Yep.
That could definitely be something we see in the Warhammer stuff. So those would be the storm I would weather. I think we would have to weather with this pick, and if I was going to just try and churn once we get there or after that, and I wanted to insulate myself, that's when I would look at the set foil. Otherwise, churn prior to that, set non-foil.
I love this card. I've had my eye on it for a long time. I think it's undervalued. I think the effect is very powerful, and its activated ability is also actually really good, especially in EDH, where it's so much more of a political game than it is, in constructed play, obviously. I think it's really solid. I think it's underplayed, if anything. And I like the shout out to the different foil versions and how, that kind of matters because it's the only printing of one of the arts. But I love it. It's nice to get away from green EDH cards and go for a blue one. So, I'm proud of it.
There is an interesting bit of politicking where you can do, thank you, by the way. If you sit behind propaganda and you make your opponents attack, it's very difficult to break through a propaganda with the entire squad. So
it definitely is.
You can actually play a weird control-y game and a game of politics with this and cards like Aether Spout and like Evacuation. You're like, oh, cool, nice army. Bloop. nerd.
See you later. Bye.
Yep. All right, so to dovetail that like really cool
Yes.
name, tiny text Biden and Thassa.
So I'm calling out all of the Godzilla promos. The one that I cited specifically is Garuda, which is Gigan's Cyberclaw of Terror. So why? Well, if you take a look at the stocks graph, they're pretty flat. They're pretty low on there. But something important is coming from this. So for those of you that follow Toho and Kaiju and Godzilla and everything, there's actually a show coming to HBO Max in 2022, Q2. Monarch, about the organization that does the research.
Oh, so that's if anybody has followed the through line for all the movies, that's the Bryan Cranston Godzilla, the Kong that's set during the Vietnam War, into Godzilla King of Monsters, into Kong vs. Godzilla. Spoiler alert, it's not about both of those characters.
Yeah. And it's very much like it is going to, I think, cause another surge in the desire for these. There is also, more importantly, next year, coming out in Japan, Godzilla the Kaiju Invasion. Now, why is that more important? Because a few months ago, the driver on these prices, when they started to surge a little bit, was 95, because they were arbitraging them to Japan and China because of a movie release. So in a few months, when Monarch hits, when the Kaiju Invasion hits, we're probably going to see those buy list numbers start to elevate on these. And there was a while there where 95 was literally paying TCG low for some of the non-foil Godzilla promos. And it wasn't just your big characters like Mothra and Godzilla. It was all of them.
That includes Baby Godzilla, Mothra's egg, Caesar, however you want to pronounce it. Yeah.
And Gigan. So as far as timeline goes, this is going to be kind of an interesting one. The reason I say that is because obviously these releases have an impact on it. Why it's going to be interesting is because a lot of people don't know it, but 95 does have an online buy list that mirrors their GP buy list. If we don't have paper events, it is going to be very important to check that buy list number. They're not the only people that are going to be buying it for more. Naturally, as they start to hoover up inventory, as they start purchasing it off of TCG Player, you'll start to see Card Kingdom move on their buy numbers. You'll start to see Star City move on their buy numbers. But if you want to get in on the first wave before some of this stuff starts to get saturated, you're looking at Q2 next year, speaking of saturated, is when I would start checking 95's website for the buy list on these numbers. Or on these cards. And I think it'd be very easily, if you buy in now, to profitably buy list and in some cases double up incredibly easily at that time. And it's harkens back to something we touched on earlier this year when we talked about how getting into these pop culture influences with Warhammer and Lord of the Rings and whatever, all of a sudden that's something else you have to pay attention to. So this is a very bizarre call out, but Monarch's coming. There's a new movie coming to Japan. There's going to be a lot of hype around Godzilla and Kaiju and this license, which Hasbro has. What about reprints, you may ask? Well, the interesting thing about these is that while they're not specifically tied to a plane, Ikoria was the perfect environment for them because it was literally just big, dumb monsters. So it makes it kind of hard to reprint these as something else, unless there's a Godzilla Secret Lair, which... Oh, wait, we already got one of those. So the odds of these seeing a reprint anytime soon, I would think, are fairly slim. And worst case scenario, for those of you following along, there are 4 Godzilla movies coming out in 2023. So if you end up sitting on them till 2023, I'm sorry, but there's no way you don't profitably buy list at that point. Either way, I'd be looking at about Q2 when this stuff starts to hit, and pay attention to those international buy lists. That's what matters.
There are a lot of lessons in this, and so I appreciate this pick for that. One of the ones I want to echo is the last one you made. You pay attention to international buy lists because that's where a lot of arbitrage happens. We've talked about it before, and this has been a decades-long thing where Magic cards do flow across the globe. They do. And it's not just
Yeah.
high-end stuff. They do move, and there's money to be made if you can follow along. And this is a great example of it because this is an IP that gets released in different places at different times. The Godzilla property is unique, and what's going on in the U.S. and our movie market is interesting because those movies do make it overseas, and they are part of the current Godzilla ecosystem. But there's been a number of other releases that hit Japan first and eventually make it onto Netflix and stuff like that. So you can kind of follow along and see what's going on. But trend tracking outside of that is extremely important to stay ahead. So something we've talked about before is also first to market. Essentially, first on a thread. These are the first riffs on an IP that we've seen like this. So there's going to be a premium cast on them anyway in time. And I'll always point at FTV Dragons. Heinous set. Heinous.
Good lord, it is bad.
It's like Coca Show and a bunch of blank pieces of cardboard.
Yeah.
But it carries a premium because it was the first. Not just because it was short printed, but it held a premium and still does because it's first to market. We were talking about the San Diego Comic-Con promos before this. The same thing with the first one. Like, the Planeswalkers available at the time compared to what we have now and the choices they made over the years makes that one look rancid. But
yeah, it's real bad.
First to market. It's Lily Vess and four black pieces of cardboard.
Yeah.
First to market. Right? Premium. So the same thing's going to happen here. And I think the other lesson here is you called out that it's not just the foils, it's the non-foils that are moving, and those are extremely approachable.
Very.
I was very curmudgeonly about this stuff when it first came out. I still dislike the Secret Lair.
Same.
The lands. I really dislike the lands. I just don't think they were good. They didn't fit with the rest of this property. I'm also not the biggest fan of the IP, so I was just sitting on it curmudgeonly. And I think I bought a box of Ikoria, so I got one of them. I got the Mono Red Godzilla. And over time, I softened up on it. And I bought the main characters for all the reasons I just mentioned. And I'm going to sit on the main characters. Still curmudgeonly about it, thinking about it, I didn't think to expand my search past the main characters. But it's the entire cast that matters. Because a rising tide, lifts all ships. And that's what'll happen here. You'll be able to buy in to any of these. Even some of the dumb, goofy ones. That Dirtle Turtle. I think that's the Mono Red Godzilla. The one that just, you cycle it away, you shuffle it back into your deck, and, the fourth time you cycle it, you just play it for free. Whoop-de-poop. That card is hot garbage. But it has a Godzilla promo, just like the Egg and Baby Godzilla. And Baby Godzilla is one of the many jump the sharks in the Godzilla line before they're rebooted. That's gonna go. You gotta look into it. It's not just Sprite Dragon, because it was playable for a while. It's not just the main characters. It's going to be everything. And I think the only thing that worries me about this isn't a reprint, because at that point the set symbol will change.
Yeah.
Or the frame might change. The only thing that worries me is the premium placed on different languages. And that's not a huge care, right? I don't I care and I worry, but it's not that great. I just don't know if there'll be a premium, where it'll be, and if I need to care about it. I think the only one that doesn't fall into this is Cyber Godzilla, because I think it comes in Japanese only?
I think that is, yeah.
And I might be wrong about this. I'm just checking the TCG Player real quick. One of them only comes in Japanese, I thought. Oh, good. I can't find it.
No, I remember it because we could only get it stateside in the 3-card packs, the promo packs or whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh, is there? Do they separate Cyber and Mecha?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that could be
Well,
it.
there's one. So there's one that comes in Japanese, and there's one that came from a secret layer.
Yeah, it's the Mechagodzilla Crystalline
Yeah,
Giant.
that came from the secret
Is
layer with Arcbound
yeah,
Ravager, and
or that was the Hangerback Walker.
yeah,
Yeah, Battle
yeah,
Fortress.
it came with Arcbound Ravager, and was that one Megatron or something else is Megatron? It was this weird,
Yeah,
goofy IP secret layer. Whatever one that is, set that one aside. I'm pretty sure there's one that only comes in Japanese. And that's an easy buy. It's a main character. It's something like Cyber Godzilla or Mecha, one or the other. And
it's Mecha Crystalline
yeah.
Giant. That's the one.
And like Teehee, Death Corona, whatever. There's not a premium on that card based on what's going on in the world. Never was. People just wanted to place money on it. It's just a fucking scientific term, man. There's one in your eye. The sun is one.
It's facts. People, look it up. It's on the internet.
And I think this is a great call out, and I'm sure we'll do some more of these as we go through. Well, Baldur's Gate 1 has my interest peaked, but we'll talk about that in like, I don't know, 6 months or Q4, whatever the heck it is in
whenever it happens.
this year. And I think that all the lessons attached to this card and this style of card are important, and I think people need to remember them either when they're shopping for this card or in general, just down the line, because there's something that can be used elsewhere for benefit. And you know, this is a low-hanging fruit from the bunch, obviously, but when you just look at them as a whole, I think it's a great place to be. It's the holiday season. You could probably buy all of them on Facebook Marketplace from somebody who's more than willing to throw them at you for a really decent price as a gift. F it. Go big or go home on Godzilla, I guess.
Yeah, that's what he did.
Exactly. When it comes to like stacking to the ceiling, I think I'd actually feel okay based on the price of a lot of these.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially the non-foils. Like you said, they're super approachable. I wouldn't mind going like 10 to 20, 30, 40 in some cases. Because like, again, look, worst case scenario, you wait till 23 when there's 4 movies that come out and all of a sudden the pop culture surge is enormous because now we've got an MCU of Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. And at the end of the day, I think all that really is going to determine how many you buy is if you want to focus more on the main characters or not. We talked about this before. You know, Ghidorah is like the most expensive extra, quote unquote. Imagine that, Ghidorah being extra in of the most expensive extra in the Ikoria set, which includes all the extended arts for the regular cards. So it's just like, how deep do you want to go on the big guys will really affect how much you want to go. Ah, finally, Mechagodzilla Japanese alt art. That's the one. Bang, got it.
We got there.
There's only one. It's the only actual like Mechagodzilla. The BioQuartz one, Space Godzilla, is one, but it's not the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Ah, finally. But yeah, I think if you're gonna move in, I think I would. God, I feel so bad. I just shit on this so hard when it first came out. I think I'd go across the entire set. I think I'd blanket the set. I'd just carpet bomb it and get one of everything. Right, just pick up everything, hold it. It will most. You'll get your premium on the big guys. You'll sell everything at the end of the day, and it's not going to be difficult to move the entire set in time. And then absolutely, you can build your stacks as you see fit. But yeah, I think this is definitely something that I feel happy stacking to the ceiling.
For sure. It's great.
Absolutely.
Licensed products in moderation with relevant licenses that are currently in pop culture.
All right.
Are good.
All right, pop quiz hotshot. So Ghidorah, King of the Cosmos is the most expensive extra when looking at market non-foil, but is not the most expensive market foil. It's number 2. What do you think is number 1? And I'll split it. It's not a Godzilla card, but it is extra.
Luris.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Gotta
Luris
be.
is
Not close.
That's how much extra Luris is.
Yeah, that's
That beats
ridiculous.
out Ghidorah.
Fucking God.
Yeah, it's just a good pup. Oh no, it's a cat. Ooh, I forgot about that. Ooh. But
Kitties.
yeah, that is.
Got anything
No,
else?
I think I'm good for this week. The holiday stuff and the lessons that come along with your pick, I think, are the highlights of this episode. Biden and Thassa can just sit on the sidelines. It's just,
Rip.
oh yeah, easy to pick up though. EDH binders galore. But I think that's gonna do it for us this week, unless there's anything else you want to touch on. All right.
Nope, I'm good.
So we are at MTG Cabalcast on Twitter, Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find the podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. I'm trying to think. We've pushed this everywhere now.
Yeah. We're there. Just look up Cabalcast. You'll find us.
The only place we're not is the podcast app, and that defeated me. That's the only thing that killed my soul. But I am Halftime Reptar on Twitter. If you want to get at me, you are
at Thirsty
we'll see you
Sizzler.
next week.
See ya.